This is Machine Technologies mixing pump. This is our 3-phase version. We also offer it in a single phase. This will do 200 bags an hour. What the requirements are to first establish setup on the machine is going to be 3-phase power, 220 volt, 30 amps. Also an adequate water supply of 40 psi of pressure at your desired flow. You will insert the power into the machine. And then you would connect your water up to where you have your water spigot, and also there's a filter in there. That way there's no debris that gets caught up in the water system. Now that we have power and water hooked up to the machine, we can now come on and be introduced to the control panel in the back. Now we come over to the control panel where we can turn the main power on to the machine. And by doing so, you'll hear the fan kick on that cools the inside of the VFD drive. By turning on the water PSI light down here will indicate. It'll illuminate green. Also the power on will illuminate green. Now you know that the machine is ready to run. The machine will not run unless there is 40 psi of pressure to the desired flow. We will now go ahead and turn our water pump on and discharge any of the air out of the lines of the water system. That way we know we have an adequate water supply with no hiccups. With the water pump on, we will now go ahead and take the water spray down nozzle. Make sure we have no air in the line. When you achieve a constant flow of pressure, you can then go ahead and start your gallons per minute on your water flow meter. At this time, we're ready to go ahead and set the water flow meter. By doing that, we'll turn the water pump on. That's the button on the bottom right of the panel. The button on the bottom left is your water prime. We will push that when we get over here by our water flow meter, which is in gallons per minute. This is our water flow meter. Before we start, we will remove the bottom cap on the mixing pump. We will take this off. That way water can exit out as we are getting the system primed. Now by holding the water prime button in, the water flow meter can be adjusted. You want to open it up to get all the air out, and you can turn it to your right to dilate it down. You want to get this calculated in gallons per minute on what material that you're using. Once you start seeing water exit out of the bottom of the machine, you let go of the water prime button. This will then drop the water solenoid, which is located right here, and stop the water from flowing through the machine. Now that we have our gallons per minute set, we can go ahead and insert the cap back onto the machine. Our water is in there, and so we're ready to do a pressure test. Now that we have primed the water system, we got our gallons per minute, we're ready to check the pressure. By doing so, this is a 600 psi pressure tester that you hook into the end of the machine at the end of the output nozzle. You install it, clamp down slides on the side of the cam lock. Then by doing that, you'll come back here. You'll then just have to make sure that your water pump is turned on, speed 1, and you'll have to have an operator back here to tell him to start the machine. You will then start the machine and hit stop. I'll demonstrate a pressure test and show you what it looks like to try to achieve 300 psi. Before you start the machine, you want to make sure your valve is in the open position. This is closed. We want to make sure that it is open to let water flow through here until it exits out the end of your mushroom sponge at the end. Once you start seeing water coming out of the end of the hose, you will gradually close the valve on your ball valve of your pressure tester. You will then see the meter jump back and forth. You want to try to achieve at least 300 psi of pressure. So at this time, we will now go ahead and start the machine. Water is exiting. We now know that we can go ahead and close the valve. Open it back up as quick as possible. You can go ahead and stop the machine. And as you can see, we were between 200 and 300. We want to go ahead and make sure that we're at least at 300. So what we will do is take 2 3/4 inch wrenches and we will evenly tighten the 3 bolts on the stator. This will allow an adjustment to get tighter and create more pressure. Simply take 2 3/4 inch wrenches and evenly tighten the stator by a half a turn each. And then just double check to make sure they're all evenly tightened. Now we can perform another pressure test to make sure that we have at least 300 psi of pressure. Now that we have water flowing through here and the machine is on, we will go ahead and close the valve to check for pressure. We're now built up around 300 psi of pressure. We can now go ahead and hold reverse. By holding reverse on the machine, you will simply just come over here, hold the reverse, let it spin for 3 to 4 seconds and hit stop. You can then go ahead and shut your water pump off. The reason why you want to hold it in reverse is to release any pressure on the main pump line that could be holding material, but it also allows the rotor inside the stator to exceed to the bottom of the output flange to allow you to close the motor back and forth when you change out shafts. Now you're ready to wet your hoses out. By doing so, you plug it into the water output clean-out adapter that is mounted on the side of the machine. Clamp it on there and go ahead and walk out your excess hose that you will be running. Now that we have our hose hooked up to the water spray down output, we will go ahead and turn our water pump on. And just simply open up the valve to let water inject into the hose before running any material. Let this run for about 10 to 20 seconds to ensure that you have a good flow of water inside your hose. After that, simply shut off the valve. Make sure you press your water pump button. That way it's not running as you're walking out your hose. Now you're ready to go ahead and disconnect your hose and walk the water out of it. Simply by lifting over your head and letting gravity flow until it reaches the end of the hose. By walking out the hose, at the end you'll be able to observe the water coming out. Once all your water is out of your hose, you're now almost ready to run material. What we'll do now is make sure that we have water in our mixing chamber for priming before we start material, and we'll simply turn on the water pump, remove the bottom cap, hold the water prime button down until you see water coming out. That's good. You can go ahead and shut the water pump off, and after water is done draining, you can go ahead and put the cap back on the bottom port. At this time we have now done the pressure check on the rotor and stator. We had made sure that our hoses are wet, and we also have water in the mixing chamber. By running these applications, it allows the machine to backsplash water. So before we ever enter material, we want to remove the safety grid. Simply pulling that off. And on the inside where the shaft is, down here in the corners are where water wants to splash back when we were doing our pressure test. So simply take a dry towel and make sure that you clean it and dry it off before entering any material before startup. This is crucial to cause void of blockage and built up during normal operation. This time we will go ahead and place the safety grid back onto the hopper and connect the grout hose to the end of the output flange on the rotor and stator. Now that we have the hopper cleaned out and we're ready to run, the main power is on. We want to make sure that we turn the speed selector to speed 3. Turn your water pump on. And before starting the machine, we want to make sure that we introduce the first bag of material into the hopper first. We'll place the first bag of material into the hopper. When it's fully placed in there, we can then go ahead and start the machine. Now that we have this machine on speed 3, material is being entered into the hopper. We will check at the end of the hose for your slurry until you get your consistent mix. Now that the slurry is out, you can go ahead and start placing the leveler onto the floor. Now that the material is coming down to the end of the hopper, we will go ahead and hold the machine in reverse. Let it cycle back in reverse and hit stop. Now we're ready to open up the end of the cam lock to insert the clean out balls. The foam ball. You'll simply stick the foam balls inside of the hose and put it back into the cam lock and close it. By this, you have good material in front of the hose, and the material that you want to spray out of your hopper by using the clean out nozzle on the side won't segregate the material and cause the hose to block. Before starting the machine with the balls in there, we'll go ahead and take off our spray down nozzle. By taking off our spray down nozzle, that will allow us to spray the inside of the hopper of all the loose material. Now the clean out balls have exited the hose. Now I want to go ahead and hold reverse and hit stop. You're ready to clean out the hose. Make sure you insert the foam ball into the hose, hooking up to the cam lock on the water pump. Simply just got to come over here and turn the water pump on and open up the ball valve to allow the water pressure to push the foam balls through to clean out all the material and loose sediment that can fall out during your pour. Make sure there's no material and sediment coming out. Have nice clean water and wait for your foam balls to eject out of the hose. Now that we have nice clean water, we know that our hoses are clean. And use the clean out shaft to get the rest of the material out of the mixing chamber. We'll simply open up the motor, swinging it open, pulling out the mixing shaft, setting that down on the ground, and pull out the clean out shaft from the side holster, insert that into the machine. Make sure that is lined up with the rotor and stator at the bottom. We've now got the clean out shaft lined up with the rotor and stator at the bottom. You'll want to use some momentum while shutting the motor and go ahead and latching it. Now that we have the motor secure, we'll simply come down here and make sure that we have the speed selector on speed 1 for clean out. Make sure you turn your water pump back on and go ahead and hit your start button on your motor. This will allow the shaft to go down and clean out the mixing chamber. You can now go ahead and take down the spray down nozzle and spray down the outside of the machine.
I'll do it up on the bottom.